All right. Hello, everyone. Scott Whitehead here. I am so excited. I get to see everybody's smiling faces. It's been so long that we've been able to see some people's faces, and um, this is a really, really exciting event that we have today. So, I'm going to turn it over to Diana in here in a minute. She'll tell you more about what the event is. But some of the groundkeeping rules here is this is a video chat, and we're going to leave your lines open. So if you have noise in the background and stuff, I'll probably ask you to mute. And then when you need to talk, you can unmute. You can use the chat feature if you want. But what we really, really want here is an opportunity for everyone here to hear the things that our partners at Swiss Re have to say and to comment on them and have a lively discussion. So that's kind of why we wanted everyone on video, so we could kind of see everyone's faces and have a lively discussion. So we couldn't be more excited for this opportunity. We think it's a huge opportunity to get to the ground floor of the future of underwriting. Over the years, we've done some creative things in underwriting, and I think Swiss recognized that. But I'll let Diana go through that. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Ms. Diana Greenberg.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all literally for attending and being on this. I cannot tell you how excited I've been about this. I had the honor of being asked by Swiss Re to put on this webinar, which started as an idea of them wanting to actually hear what the field, the agents, were feeling about how business was being done. And for the last few months, it has grown into a 4-part session, because if you know anything about me, you know that I'm probably going to bring up a lot of topics that I think are worth discussing. I am very involved in a lot of underwriting boards with a lot of different companies. You guys all know that I have really deep relationships. I have a lot to say about processing and underwriting. I try to really bring up the issues that I hear from all of you specifically every day. If you are on this call, it's because I or someone from Total Financial has talking to you, and I believe that you have a voice. And the importance of this first one out of 4 forums is going to be for Swiss Re, who you never get to talk to. You don't even know about them because they're in the background behind all the insurance companies that you work with. They're the ones providing data, collecting data, putting processes together for the insurance companies. And rather than them going to the insurance companies and saying, okay, how's this working? They actually want to go to you and say, okay, how's this working? So that they can implement, change, adjust, whatever they need to moving forward. So I am honored because this is saying a lot about Total Financial and how we process business. I feel even more special because all of you that are on this call, although it's not a wine event, separate subject, give you the chance to really have a voice and talk about your experiences. So with that being said, I would like to introduce Nicole Myers. She's the SVP of Underwriting Processes at Swiss Re. I've actually known Nicole for a very long time, go figure. She's had some other roles before Swiss Re, so she's been in the business a very, very long time. So Nicole, why don't you take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that warm introduction, and thank you for having me today. So Nicole Myers, I am an SVP, as Diana mentioned, here at Swiss Re, and our team is very much responsible for driving underwriting innovation for the Americas region. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am. I'm going to talk to you about who Swiss Re is, and then we're going to get into some content today and hopefully into a very open dialogue. And along the way, I'm going to introduce a couple of my esteemed colleagues who are also on the phone with you. I don't have to belabor the point. We're absolutely pumped. Like, we're just super excited to be here. In terms of my background, I am an underwriter by background, but I'm a salesperson at heart. I've worked across agency and brokerage. I've worked in direct to consumer. I have led a team of individuals who was responsible for the field underwriting, both tools, technology, and education of salespeople. And I believe that until we figure out this wedding between sales and underwriting and how we work in concert together, that we're never actually going to close this insurance gap that we keep talking about. We have to marry our worlds. So really pumped to be able to have the conversation with you. Part of what we do in terms of innovation is design products, and we don't want pretty things that sit on shelves, because we can produce beautiful stuff, but if it doesn't sell, it's absolutely worthless to all of us. So it's really about innovation, better processes, better products. How do we help our carriers write better business? How do we help our carriers write more business? And how do we do that in a way that sells? So I have with us today, Mark Laramie. He's going to talk a little bit about who we are as a company, Swiss Re, what we do, give you a little bit of his vibe and his background, and then we're going to head right into the content. So Mark, if you are with us.
Yeah, I am. And Nicole, thank you so much for passing the baton. I truly appreciate it. And I think the theme of this is definitely everyone's extremely excited. I need to, how this whole thing came together. And it's a really tremendous story. For you who won't know me, I've always been in distribution. I've been with three major life insurance carriers. I was very fortunate to, one of my prior carriers, build a tremendous relationship with a gentleman that wholesales directly within Total Financial for a number of years. I don't need to mention names here, but just a sensational person. And he provided an introduction to Diana Greenberg, and her and I had the opportunity to speak together. And we came up with this brilliant idea, is really with her expertise, her distribution. She's always been so tremendous of speaking to the carriers. I said, why don't we listen to the voice of the most important people in the industry, is the distribution and the people on the street that are moving life insurance product and closing the protection gap. Because that is our mission. My mission every morning I wake up is, how do we find more innovative ways to close the protection gap? And it's through underwriting and product development. And it's listening to the voices here through Total Financial. And Diana has been tremendous. And I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. Nicole and I were just super excited about this, just talking about earlier. And as I've only been with Swiss Re for just over a year. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that's a small tenure, because there's brilliant people here, been for a number of years. And we have some of the most smartest people across this great globe. And what I want to do from this experience is hearing your voices through Total Financial, is bring that to us, and then allows us to be more impactful to our great clients, the ones you serve every day. So we have plenty of abilities here, but we want to learn from you and Total Financial how we can be better partners to the carriers that you serve.
Awesome.
To you, Nicole.
Thank you, Mark. So Swiss Re, this esteemed reinsurer, is an insurance carrier. We are one of the largest in the world. We do business across property and casualty, life and health. We work in a number of different spaces. We are a multinational. And we actually have the world's #1 underwriting manual. Our underwriting manual sets the tone, it sets the guide for the vast majority of underwriting done in this industry across the world. And that is particularly important. We take it super, super seriously. So everything we do is backed by absolutely deep expertise in underwriting. I am going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to talk about expectations, and then we'll talk about the content that we're here to cover today. And I have one more very important person that I do want to introduce for our conversation. So we are going to share a little bit of knowledge. We're talking about process today. And when I get into that, I'll show you the space that we're really honed in on for today's conversation, because I know there's a ton of stuff that we could talk about, but we want to make sure we're focused today on the application process, that real upfront process and the requirement ordering. Talk to you, hopefully give you a little tip on where we think things are headed in terms of that process, and then get into that open dialogue. There are some prompts and some questions at the end that I have on a slide, but to be honest with you, my sense is that we probably won't need them to talk, but they're there for a safety net just in case. Before we get into the process portion, there's one other person I want to introduce, and that is Mr. Ben Otten, who is joining us here today. Ben, if you could just say a quick word about your background and who you are.
Yeah, sure. So again, like Nicole, an underwriting background, have worked both in the direct space as well as on our product side for Swiss Re, helping our clients with those facultative responses. So all those times you were told no, it may have been me, but no. So I've had this great opportunity to talk with both the financial reps and help work through that application process, but also work with our underwriters. You know, what's the right messaging? How do we get cases placed, even with hard answers or hard decisions that we're having to come back to clients with. I really like this space, as Nicole mentioned. I think it's really important for, especially us as a reinsurer, to understand your guys' point of view. How are you guys and ladies feeling about the application process? Are things going well? What we don't want to do, as Nicole mentioned, is to start proposing with our direct carriers, specific things that aren't going to make a difference for your guys' life and ladies' lives, right? We need to make sure that the things that we propose with our direct clients are making an improvement for your guys' overall business processes.
Thank you very much, Ben. Ben is the rare combination of individual who is both data-minded and an underwriter. So we like to make sure that we keep him on screen a lot, because it's actually really hard to find a Ben. So really pumped to have him here too.
Diana raised her hand as well.
I do want to say that in terms of us getting into the next couple of minutes of content around process, I'm happy, with mics open, if you have a quick question that you want to ask, to do that. If you have something that's a little bit more in depth, save it for the discussion portion. We'll absolutely tag it and then make sure that we address your question. So,
Nicole, let me just add one thing before you dive in, so that everybody knows this on this call. This is specifically regarding your submission process.
Yes.
This call will not be about accelerated underwriting and underwriting special programs carriers have. This is about you getting an application, you meeting your client, you doing an electronic process, front app to policy delivery, so that everybody knows not to go off into the accelerated underwriting area when we have open discussion. Okay.
Good, thank you. And that's the perfect segue. Thank you very much. The three boxes we're really going to be thinking about are the three circles on this screen, right? Are application, requirement, ordering, this space, right? And that level set is perfect, because we're going to talk about that across all styles of application. It isn't specific to the accelerated underwriting conversation, which is one that we will come back and have in the future. I mean, think about the manner in which an application is taken today, right? There's a handful of different buckets, and they each have their challenges. There's pros and cons to each of these styles, right? You think about the drop ticket process. So, you start kind of very skeleton application, just a handful of information, and that gets passed off, hopefully not into the ether, gets passed off somewhere. And the application then ends up being completed by another entity, typically, telecall center of one manner or another. There's kind of this middle of the road application process that exists as well. And I think about this, it's almost like a partially digital space. Often it's taken through some sort of portal. It looks like an e-app. It might kind of feel like an e-app, but oftentimes it's producing a PDF. So even though you're typing into something that seems dynamic and reflexive, and there's questions kind of popping up and coming and going, what it's producing behind the scenes often is not much better than a scanned document, right? This is actually an area of opportunity for a lot of carriers. They kind of have created a really slick front end, but it's not doing that really great interaction, kind of that future step for application processing that we all want to get to. And then there's the bucket that's evolving very rapidly right now. It's becoming the gold standard. And that's what we think about when we think about a fully digital process. And it's important to keep the distinction here that this isn't just accelerated. As a matter of fact, the idea and the concept of this fully digital process is one that actually cuts across products, but it also cuts across these processes, because there's a world where the fully digital process that gets developed could go out and support a call center in its entirety. So you could actually still have a future where you have a super light drop ticket style app, but it's going out and behind the scenes, that very robust digital process is still being supported just by a different individual who's taking the application on your behalf. And if we think about where we want to drive and why that's the gold standard, it's because the application process of the future is one where carriers are really thinking about how to ask customers how to create application processes that are hyper individualized. How do I only gather the amount of information that I need to make a decision instead of every single piece of information that's out there? If you think about why the drop ticket process was created to begin with, it was because the applications had become so daunting, nobody wanted to deal with them. Right? Remember when I started in this industry, the very first application that we were working with, I was back in the MetLife days, it was something like 36 pages long. It was an albatross of a document. And, it was like, oh, we're going to reduce it. And they just pulled it apart and made it sections, right? And then that was confusing. So it's incredible where we've come to and how that evolution has happened. But the solve for this, right, is not just how do I offboard that work to somebody else. As well as I do, every time a client walks out of your office, every time you walk out of your home, every time you hang that phone up, there's a chance you never hear from that person again. So the more that we can refine the upfront application process, we can make it light and easy for both the individual who might be taking it on their own or with your assistance as an agent, the better off we all are. And it isn't just about eliminating information up front so that later on the underwriter has to ask it. And so you've elongated the underwriting process. That's not the solve either, right? It's really about how can we start to pull in all of the elements that are available to us in terms of data to really create this back and forth flow. And so the application, much like between two humans, becomes a digital dialogue. It actually becomes this reflexive conversation back and forth based on what we know about the applicant and what we can pull in from them, often in real time. So we think about, we've started the application, but we've also got an authorization to start to pull in data, right? And now we can start to create and refine an application process that's really tailored to what the person is telling us. It's okay if they have some medical conditions. It's all right. We don't want that to stop the process. Most of us are not the perfect human being in terms of health. Most of us have stuff. At one point, the stat was that the average, there was 11 prescriptions per person on average. And I'm like, I'm not on any. So that means somebody else is on a lot, right? This is the stuff you encounter when you run into the application process. We don't want that to shut things down. It shouldn't stop an application because a human is a human. You should be able to pull in the data, validate the data, and really continue to keep moving. So by the time it gets into underwriting, they aren't asking a bunch of questions. It isn't slowing down that process either. So this upfront process is so critical. It is possibly, other than actually getting the person into the sale, this is the most critical time. And it's such an area that's ripe for opportunity for us when we work with carriers, because we know we can get so much better at it. This right here, and we're not going to go into this in this session today, but this is really the list of available data sources that, if you think about that flow that I just had on screen, that can be pulled in at multiple points. Some of these are not fully digital yet, which presents its own challenges, but there's startups in the space working on part and parcel on all of these. And there's other data on the horizon. There's almost, at this point, there's almost too much, right? But there's other data on the horizon as well. We can really start to bring in to create a more dynamic, reflexive, but easy to use application process up front. That really speeds everything up. Diana, I'm actually going to ask you, is there anything else that you wanted me to kind of cover in this level set about process?
Oh yeah, I wrote down 6 things.
Okay, let's go.
So this is all in my mind about adaptation, right?
Mhm.
Everybody on this call has sold insurance for a long time and has taken applications, is used to meeting with clients, and now is being told, nope, you got to send this link. Clients got to do this link. Couple things that have come to my mind that I'm just going to start putting into your minds as we talk about this. Making your clients prepared before this process, because as Nicole has brought up, they're trying to gather information. This is not perfected yet. It is reflexive. Depending upon what your answer is, it may or may not ask another question. And sometimes your clients may not know the answer. And if they don't know the answer, it's up, boom, kick out, which is totally unfair to you guys. So it's important that they're prepared. The other thing that's very important is part of this process, as you all know, is a phone interview. A lot of you have had experiences with your clients in phone interviews. There are carriers that own the phone interview process themselves. So that means the carriers actually got a department that's doing the phone interviews, or there are carriers that outsource the phone interviews to be done. Some of your clients are very adaptive. They'll go and do the phone interview. Sometimes it takes 15 minutes. Sometimes it takes 40 minutes. But a lot of the carriers are going, you know what? It's getting really hard. People don't want to do the phone calls. You guys can't get your clients to do the phone calls. So they're coming up with, let's do the phone call as a electronic document so that the client can go and fill out all these questions at their own time and answer these without having to pick up a phone and talk to someone. So kind of want to get people's feedback about how they feel about that. And the last thing is, Nicole, you started this conversation with building products, building platforms, right? You want to make the stuff sell. So all of these electronic submission programs right now, the way they've been onboarded is term, not permanent insurance. Okay. And we'll get even more picky and say, some of them can't even handle owner and beneficiary changes, but this needs to be progressive and it needs to encompass all of the products that these people are selling, because it gets really confusing to say, I can do this for term and I can't do it for permanent. So those are the 4 observations I just made as you spoke.
Yeah, and those are all, and I'm going to pop back over to, I think it was this slide that I was thinking about while you were talking, right? Listen, I'm in the middle of an application right now. I'm buying a product and I won't call and finish my tele interview because I already did it online and I'm angry about it. So, and I know better. We really do as an industry have to get better at this, right? And it's incremental, being able to just like push forward little by little. And the explanation of why you now have to share a link, right, with your customer in order to get something signed, or what that means, what the email is going to say, all of that really needs to be, I think it needs to be delivered in an increasingly easier fashion.
And the same way across the board, because it's different everywhere you go.
And so absolutely agree on that. I also think the onboarding of new products is just absolutely critical for carriers. I know, we support, and I know Mark is going to have opinions about this. We want you to innovate across all of your products, right? It benefits all of us. And you're right. It's this sense at the carrier of we're going to start with this term product and then we'll expand. And then they get caught and it doesn't end up expanding. Part of what we do here at Swiss Re is say, how can we function as an extension of your resources? Because we want this innovation across all of your products, all of your product lines. This shouldn't be reserved for one thing, and you shouldn't have multiple processes. But obviously, we're chipping away at it, right? But we're headed for that vision and that gold standard in the future.
I wanted to maybe bring a couple of things together. Daniel, you were talking about this idea of being prepared, making sure that you're prepared, your clients are prepared. And Nicole, I think you said something really that is interesting. This idea that an individual on average has about 11 medications that they've taken in their lifetime. I mean, it's this idea that ambiguity is truly the problem here for underwriters. It's those instances where we don't necessarily know why someone has taken a drug. Maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago. But if they're able to speak to that when the telephone interviewer does call, it really does help that application process move forward and may be an easy answer that gets that application processed. Maybe Nicole should take the telephone interview. Maybe it's an easy explanation as to why they needed the additional information. But it's those types of conversations where just that type of review, again, our pharmacy reports at this point in time are around 90% hit rate. So you're talking about almost any individual who's had a medication in the past, it's going to show up in one of these databases and it's going to be present and we're going to be asking about it. And Dinah, to your point, as long as they're prepared, they have the answer ready, that's going to help that application, I think, move much quicker through the process.
Proper preparation prevents poor performance. All right, so we've talked a bit about, I would love at this point to open up the floor and just say, let's talk about questions that you have and anything that we have just discussed. My preference is actually to drop these slides and for us to see each other. Would that be okay with everybody?
That'd be great.
Okay. I would love to just kind of hear thoughts at this point, questions about what we're talking about, things that you're thinking about in terms of the process, where it can be improved, aspects of customer behavior that play into this as well, right? What you're seeing on the customer side, and how you wish you could potentially even influence your customers during this process.
And if I want to add any part of a client getting frustrated and then all of a sudden they're back to, okay, let's go back and do things the old way because this may be something that's too difficult, please bring that up. And I know every single person on this call has tried and done an electronic submission process. So I'm sure you all have some sort of feeling about how the whole process has gone, whether it's drop ticket, IGO submission, express applicant, whatever it is, direct to company, drop it out.
Bring it on, safe space, let's roll.
I'll go. Yeah, first of all, I never really understood the real differences between a drop ticket or an IGO, or I didn't know the nuances of, which way to go and what were the differences. So I always had trouble deciding which way to go. But the main problem that I've had is just feel like the old way, you have more control, In our agency, we used to get a copy of the medical records sent to us. If something didn't work out with a carrier and we needed to go somewhere else, we had everything here in our file. We just had more control. It just seems like with the electronic process, everything's out of our hands. We don't know what's being ordered. We don't know what's being asked of the client. It's all behind the scenes and we don't have a hand in it. And that's kind of my main frustration with it, I guess.
That was really good, Amy. I totally forgot to bring that up. The lack of, we're used to all having copies of the medical exams and the APSs. And once this became an electronic submission platform, all that information became the property of the carrier. And depending upon which carrier, they are kind enough to either release that information or not release that information. And, if the case doesn't work, that prohibits us from moving it along. So Amy's got a really, really valid point about, although she says control, but it's just, we're not giving the information. So Nicole, if you could touch to why maybe that's happened and the reason for it, that might help.
So there's a big movement to minimizing the amount of requirements that are ordered, right? and Ben can talk a bit about the optimization studies that he's worked on. Underwriting is a cost center, point blank, right? It's a cost center. And so it can cost thousands of dollars to underwrite a very small app. I mean, that was some of the carriers, and carriers kind of track individually, but I mean, there are carriers that have absolutely astronomical costs to upfront underwrite. And so this movement of bringing things in-house was really around like, I only need what I need. I want to train my underwriters to make decisions with as little information as they possibly can, or with the cheapest piece of information that they possibly can. And the carrier's sense on that is that the only way to do that is basically strip all of that. And the word control is used here, so I'll use the word control, right? The control over those requirements in the beginning and bring that all in-house, bring that all into the purview of this cost center that's always trying to optimize for costs and save money. And that's a big drive in the change for what happened, right, in terms of requirement ordering. At the same time, there's the digitization aspects, right? We realize that we fell behind banking and fintech and the digital experience. And in order to, in order to create some of these more personalized experiences, you have to be able to control kind of the data feeds coming in and know when to order them. There's a lot of cost savings. There's a ton of over ordering of requirements in general. There are some shops that would disagree with me wholeheartedly, right? And there are others that would tell me they wish they could make decisions with even less. But in general, that drive of like taking the reins back is really is very much how do we make do with less in the world. So I think the thought on the carrier side is like, well, if it's being ordered before the app is even being submitted, I'm getting stuff, one, that I may not need, two, and I would never say that anybody here would do this, but there's a lot of trust issues, right? Of like, I got the records, but I was missing pages 5 through 10. So now I got to go chase pages 5 through 10. I have to go order this record anyway. Or the requirements have gone stale. The carrier now has to order them for a second time because they need to validate that requirement is what it is, right? So again, this is earlier when I was like, underwriting and sales, like we need to come together in a great romance. Like there are trust issues that also need to be broken down in addition to cost savings. Ben, is there anything that you would want?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think your digitization thing is exactly right as well. There's this wish and drive to optimize requirements, do more with less. But then also there's, a lot of these carriers are using automation systems. They're putting a lot of these results into machines. So they're digitizing those exam results and allowing for the automation piece to understand what those are. And if they don't have those specific reference numbers and things like that, but so that just, it creates additional time for different things to be received and for those results to be delivered in a different manner than they would have been previously. So the more manual it takes, the longer the underwriting, when in reality, what we've seen with direct carriers is that once those exam results are able to be digitized, they can increase the actual throughput without an actual human actually looking at them. And so again, that's helping with the speed of final underwriting decision.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's move to a question now.
Yeah,
I know
Jeff.
at least there's like 4 people that could answer this, so don't be shy. How are you guys presenting this to your clients? The client calls up and you get the request for insurance and you have to explain to them the process. How are you doing that? And do you feel comfortable with that process? Somebody talk about how they're handling it. Yeah.
Diana, before I answer your question, I kind of had a follow-up. I totally agree with Amy on a lot of what she said, but especially that when an insurance company has 7, 8 different ways to put a case in, there should be a very easy way to decide which one we want to use. And right now, I understand Amy's frustration because like constantly I'm calling like, which one do I want to use for what? Because it's not clearly defined. And I don't think these companies should have 6 or 7 different ways to underwrite. They should have 1 or 2 ways, right? Not 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Secondly, there's no standardization, right? So one company, every company does things a very lot different. But if there's one reinsurance company out there that's kind of putting together all the rules, I'm unclear why it's so difficult for all these companies to just kind of go, hey, this is a standardized way we can do an application and have the same, accelerated if they want to do that, or the same steps. I have one more comment. I don't know. But anyways, those are, standardization would be great. So we're not, and the ability to use standardize across the industry. Like, I don't even get why we can't do DocuSign. Like, why there's just not a program that we can use to have all of our clients do everything electronic. Some companies let us do some things up front, not in the back, not upon delivery. It's just back and forth, and there's just no way for us, and every company's totally different. So that would be a very nice upfront feature to have, like electronic signatures for all.
For everything.
Yeah. Can I jump in?
Yeah, and just, but along the way, along the whole process, if something's missed, bam, here's an electronic signature. Something's missed, here, bam. But I constantly get an email back from insurance companies like, hey, we're not accepting that signature. You have to print it, have the client manually sign it, somehow scan it back in. Like, I don't get why that's still going on today.
You and me both, Jeff.
Okay, well,
You and me both.
hang on, that's not the right answer. You're the company that's supposed to be pushing down the
Well, we
requirement.
do. I mean, we do. Listen, we fully support e-signature processes, right? But remember, we're not a technology company. Swiss Re isn't a software company. Swiss Re is an innovation arm, right, for underwriting, that puts underwriting decisions. So the areas that touch underwriting are really the areas where we can impact the most change. We would always suggest somebody uses e-sig or voice sig, depending on where they are. But ultimately, the vendor that they choose for that, if they choose to do one at all, is on them. But we agree on this signature thing. There's a lot of opportunity in terms of consistency of practice for upfront application. Also,
sorry, Nicole, everyone should really mute while they're not talking. So
Yeah,
we
so
can,
there's back.
yeah, there's a lot of opportunity to smooth out the upfront application processing and practices and requirement ordering as well.
Okay, does anybody have any issues with how the phone interviews are being done and the ability for your client to call in, be called, fill it out on a piece of paper? Brent, this is like, I'm going to put you on the spot. Come on. I've gone down this road with you many times.
And I have had, I recognize evolution here. I've been in the business for a long time and beginning to feel more and more like a dinosaur every day. But I do understand that this is the way of the future and this is the way we need to do it. I have had virtually zero success with, that's not totally true, but I mean, I've had lots of failures where people have, I go on the, I take the application, I submit it, and they're supposed to make a phone call and they don't make the phone call, or when they do make the phone call, the line is busy and they can't get through, and then they lose interest. I mean, as a salesperson, you understand that, I mean, we need to keep their interest. And if we turn it over to somebody else and it lasts for days, maybe they lose the interest. I've had several cases that should be written and they just never made the phone call for whatever reason. And is that on them? But it probably is. But at least in the old days when I had the paper and I had them sit here in the office and I said, sign this. And even if I miss a signature, I've been doing this for 50 years. I've never gotten every signature the first time. I'm famous for that, but that's just me. In any case, it's a frustrating thing. So I don't know how to make it easier. Your initial question, Diana, you said, how do we coach our people? I don't know how to coach somebody for this. You need to have some sort of urgency. You need to make this call by Thursday or your house is going to blow down. Something's got to happen to get them to do this. But it's frustrating. And I know it's a process and we'll work it out and it'll be better in the future. But it's like some of the cases I'm working on now where they have to upload their tax return. They have to upload their driver's license. Not everybody's capable of doing that. And so anyway, it's going to get better, but you're right. I'm frustrated. And
Brent, are you
Brent,
needing like that notification before you, but when that telephone interview is ordered, so that you can do that follow up, or you're already engaged with the company and you're receiving that, or is that something that you're still needing?
I've missed the first part of the question. Ben, say it again.
Yeah, so some of our carriers, they do like they have a nice UI platform for their actual sales agents where they can show you where they or have requested or required a telephone interview. Is that something that's present for you guys? Is there that notification for you to then go out and do that?
I think it is. I
Okay.
mean, that I get a notice from underwriting that says your client is log into this portal or call this phone number. And so I get that, usually take that information and send it right over to the people and tell them to do it. But they don't. That's frustrating.
You're just saying that they don't have that necessarily urgency to complete it.
They don't.
They don't. And they're not, and they're losing. And the key words that he said is, and this happens to many people on this call, is they will lose business.
Yeah.
No, 100%. Yeah.
That phone call does not get made. And then guess what? The carrier closes out the case, because in 3 weeks, if your client hasn't called and done the phone interview, then they close the file. And then you got to reopen the file. And you know what happens after that? Oh, I'm going to have so much fun on this. You know what happens after that?
Yeah.
Then they have to possibly resubmit the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they're not in the same place that Nicole was. You know, she sort of tongue in cheek mentioned this idea that she's already completed an application. What the heck do I have to do this again for?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So like, if you're not given that specific information or those details as to why there's additional information needed, I think there's less impetus for people to complete it. Certainly
I think,
feel for you, Brent, that you're not receiving that feedback, I guess.
yeah, and I think there's a couple of areas that are being worked on right now to keep that urgency high, right? The thinking around how do you keep a person engaged in the process, and what are the like support mechanisms? What's the communication strategy, right? Part of this fully digital experience is trying to shift away from that, because if we can just get the app done right now with you, we don't have to do all these other things. I actually don't ever have to do a telephone interview. You've got a captive audience, just get it done here. I mean, to me, that's the gold standard of the future, is like, don't walk out the door, don't leave, don't hang the phone up. Let's just go. We have everything we need. We can close this off right now and get a signature. So I think that's the future that we have to get to, because anytime you let a person's attention lapse, you decrease the likelihood they ever come back in. The other side of that, while we work towards that vision of the future, is trying to use some of the behavioral interventions that we have teams working on to keep people's attention in that urgency. It's still hard, right? You're trying to tap into what's called like a deep-rooted driver. And a deep-rooted driver is a person's motivation to complete something. They need to have a sense of urgency around this thing. And it becomes the 12th most important thing on their list when it doesn't get done right in that second, right? So how do you continue to tap into the reason why they called you in the first place? Because there was a motivation. Something caused them to get to that place to even want to buy that policy, to close that insurance, right? So you have to keep figuring out how you get back and you dig in and you remind them. And we think a lot about what are the technology supported ways that we can help you tap in and keep tapping into those customers' deep-rooted drivers to complete.
Nicole, maybe some of the thing, and it all depends on the case and the size of it and such like that, but maybe we should have the ability to complete the part 2 with the people on the phone. As long as I've got them on the phone, I'm doing the part 1, I've got their beneficiary, I've got their address or social security number. Why don't we just do the part 2 right there? They're probably going to have to get an APS anyhow if it's a big enough case. And if I could just do the part 2, I can just work with them and ask them the questions. The other thing is also, Amy talked about losing control years ago, and I always remember this. Years ago, one of my clients, and I tried a telephone interview, years ago, and the guy talked about he went on a vacation in Mexico and he came back with Montezuma's Revenge. Well, by the time the nurse examiner on the phone took this thing, it was ulcerative colitis, and it wasn't that. It was 2 days worth of diarrhea. And so when I'm taking the part 2, I can control that. I know how to put that down. But so I like Amy. I feel the same way about a loss of control. If I'm able to take the part 2, coach them through that kind of stuff, and then let them know that about the other things that may happen, the DMV and the other things but if I can coach them through the part 2, I don't mind taking the time. It really saves me time in the long run and saves me frustration.
Yeah.
It's also
Okay.
about timing. Sorry, it's also about timing. It's our client's time, and so basically we made an appointment with our client to meet with them to take the application, get all this information, and then it's like, oh, you have to do this phone interview too. That's the last thing they want to do, especially talking to somebody they don't know. We have relationships with these clients for decades, and for them to like go and talk to a complete stranger about very personal stuff or releasing their personal information, nobody wants to do that. And so if there was some way that we could get more information and completely forego anybody else talking to our client, then we can, just like Brent was saying, we can give the correct information, but not, so heartburn doesn't turn into GERD and Montezuma's Revenge doesn't turn into ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where if we have control, we can, control the spin of this thing, then we're not looking at a decline or someone completely walking away from it and saying, it's too much, it's too difficult to get a policy.
Hey, Jeff, I have a follow-up question to you on that, and everybody can answer on this one too. Does the case size matter to you on that, on the type of information that you want to get, or is it the client that matters?
The client's the only thing that matters. I don't care about the case size, because even if we sell a $1 million 10-year term policy and boom, they get cancer, and now we want to convert that policy, that just turned into a really big case. So every case, whether it's a small or big case, can eventually, and those people usually buy life insurance, 4 or 5 times in their lifetime. So there's always those stepping stones to get to the bigger case, as they become higher earners. And so I would much rather take paper apps and completely forego the electronic app and the telephone interview, because I've got decades of experience with the client and I'm building this relationship and they trust me. They know me, they can trust me, they can call me, I'm gonna answer my phone, and they're not talking to a complete stranger about all the personal stuff.
Mark.
Mark, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I did. I joined the insurance business in 1965, which is well before Diana. You're 21, right? At any rate, back then, the applications were about 4 or 5 pages long. As a matter of fact, the Home Office printed the applications. We don't have to waste reams of paper in our printer. We arranged for APSs. We arranged for a medical exam. We had copies of everything in a file just in case we needed it. And basically, it seems they were able to underwrite just the same way that people underwrite today. Then the applications got bigger and bigger. And at first, the companies blamed their attorneys. It was a legal business here. We're trying to protect the company. And of course, they're protecting us. They're taking away some clientele from us, but they're protecting us. Then the applications got bigger and bigger, and it said it was a cybersecurity protection situation. Well, then it occurred to me that the more information that the company had on their files and their records, if that company is hacked, then there's more information that goes to the person hacking the company. And then it comes with the telephone calls from the company, the interviews. I've had some very good history with some of these interviews. That they were very nice people, but sometimes they had a bad day, they have a headache, bad mood, and sometimes they just totally turn off the client. And then we have another problem. Many times physicians will put things on their chart which they think are going to help the client get a better result from their insurance carrier, the health insurance carrier. And when we go back with second opinions and we get them re-examined for a certain
Underwriting. We'll get into that during. I'm going to stay away from that, Mark, only because that's a whole underwriting conversation and not an electronic submission, but you got a really good
Right.
point.
You see where I'm going? I can compare it.
Yes. So
When I started to now, and to now, it's just a full-time job taking an application.
but you bring up a great point, and here's why I'm really happy that you spoke up. The reason why there was this swing from carriers of taking away the part 2, right? Taking away the part B, taking away the medical questions, was actually because the field said, this is crazy. We should be selling. Somebody else needs to do this. I'm not an underwriter. I don't want to have anything to do with all this information you want. You guys want it, you do it. I'm going to give you the bare bones and you go take care of it on your own. That was the shift like a decade and a half ago that actually pulled the part 2 out of the hands of the field in most cases, right? So for me, it's so interesting to hear the arc of this narrative, because Jeff, you're like, no, this is my client. They're going to tell me all their stuff. They're not going to tell some stranger on the phone this story. They need to be talking to me, right? So it's actually this return to that full customer experience, that kind of full suite of services. That's so important. The relationship is paramount, and you own the relationship. At the end of the day, you are the face of that relationship, and that is your customer. So the underwriter needs you, the carrier needs you. You need to keep your customer happy. And we've got to figure out how we find the balance, because Mark, I don't want you to spend all your time taking applications, right? That's not what we want. We can't do it with 4 pages anymore. We would like to get to that place, but I promise you it'd be data heavy in the background. And a lot of the drive towards taking more and more things was actually because we've got new products, we've sliced and diced, and we've got preferred classes now. We've got smoker versus non-smoker versus, all sorts of interesting things have happened behind the scenes with the way that mortality is looked at. And unfortunately, that's translated into a terrible customer experience up front. So we have to swing that pendulum back. We have to make sure that the relationship is squarely in your world, that you can keep your customer happy, and that you're not spending your time doing things you don't need to do. So we've got to find technology and data to help us kind of get that pendulum back to a good place, right? And actually be able to harmonize those worlds a bit more, because it's gone too far out. You shouldn't be in a position where you're not closing cases because a call center didn't make a call, right? That's crazy. And that's through no fault of your own. And that's extremely frustrating, right? Brett, to hear you say that, you've got cases that just, they don't close, right? You lose customers because you don't know where the call went. It never got returned. It's not okay. So we have to solve that through innovation. We have to solve that through digital means, because the answer isn't, I just give you back the part B and you do it all in paper and we work in paper forever, because it's not cost effective and none of us are going to be here because it's just too expensive. It's too expensive to do that, right? So this is the conversation that we need to reinforce the direction of where we drive the innovation for underwriting and for things like taking that application and ordering requirements and creating a customer experience that matters.
Well, it does not have to be all paper. Every one of us have a laptop. And what we can do is we can complete the application, we can complete the part 2, we can do it all on the laptop, and you get it digitally, don't you? So the bottom line is we are in control of our client. The client is comfortable with us. In today's world where people keep calling us to trying to get personal information, getting a call from a call center and asking them for their confirming their social security number and all kinds of things like that, and their dates of birth, makes people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Let's
if I may jump in, that I completely agree with that. I had a client call me, put them on hold and say, is this the name of the call center that's supposed to be calling me, because they're asking me for my social, my date of birth. And what's sometimes frustrating is that they don't say, oh, this is, I'm calling from Prudential or calling from Protective or Lincoln or whomever. It's whatever the call center's kind of information is, something financial. And I think what would help would be options that will help you feel like we have control depending on the agent, because obviously everything is going to the tech side and things are supposed to be streamlined and efficient. But if there's options, if one client, like I have a client who, they're buying like 20, 30 million of insurance, and we're very close friends and the wife doesn't want to tell me all of her information. That might be some health information because we hang out all the time. So there's some things that if she wants to go in that to talk to someone else, great. But that 99% of our clients want to talk to us and want for us to help guide the narrative and make them feel comfortable. So I think options will help us feel like we have control. If we want to go.
One of the options is that we can still go for APSs. The APSs come to us and we can digitally put in what the responses are, send it to you electronically, but also tag on, scan on the actual document so that you have backup material if you elect to use it.
Okay, so I'm gonna, because in an effort to speed this up, because I know we're coming to an end, and there's a lot of people on this call that I didn't hear from who actually work very, very deep into large cases, okay? There are some people on this call who I know for a fact, like Jeff said, they're very controlling over their clients. And I'm just sitting here looking at you guys going, you guys that are writing these cases, what are you doing with your clients and these large clients? And you're saying, okay, I'm handing you off to this company to submit this information. How is that going with you? Does that work for you?
No,
Oh, Bruce,
it does not work.
No,
you're right.
We like to go the traditional route for any large cases. And I think the kind of scary thing when you're doing drop ticket or AUP or whatever it may be, I know we're discussing different things, but it is the lack of communication. And several people have mentioned it, but we put two people through just recently, husband and wife. Husband's almost done already. Wife never got the phone call. Then she called in and they said they didn't have her in the system. So now we look stupid or incompetent as agents because we don't know. I had a client who took an exam and I called and said, or actually one of my assistants called and asked how everything was going. And they said, oh, I already took the exam, but you guys have it. We're like, why did you take an exam? I didn't even know. So it's the communication to the agent, because then when they know before us, we feel like the control issue, but also like we're not doing a good service to our clients. Like it's out of our hands and we're not participating and we're not the ones that are pushing the case along.
We are talking about I just wanted somebody to say what it feels like when you're up with a big client, Bruce. Like, how do you feel about letting go and saying, sorry, I'm out of
Zero chance, Diane. I'm talking on this call for one reason, and it's last name Greenberg. If I have a situation, I want nothing to do with electronic. Here you go, Mr. Big Client. You're going to get some robocall from some moron who's going to blow my case. I want nothing to do with that. I just went through an electronic enrollment. I thought I knew what I was doing. I about pulled my ears off. So to give this to Mr. AD&D entrepreneur who wants to buy a large amount of insurance and tell them it's okay, Beijing is going to take care of it for you, let's go, is a non-starter.
all of my calls came from India someplace. I don't know.
They're working on their voices. Mark hit the nail on the head. You want to control it. And Diana, for as long as I've known you, the ability to navigate the APS and help get the medical records and coach the client through, I think sleep apnea, but maybe I'm just a little overweight, and have some nitwit blow the case because of one wrong entry electronically. Non-starter, never happened. My partner James will come and hit me over the head with a 5-iron.
Okay, well, see, that's how you end a wonderful.
On a positive note.
The heck of a 5-iron.
I could keep going, believe me. I've got a couple other people that might have some other opinions.
Listen,
I
we
think
get it. And Eric used the word scary. That's all you need to hear. I think that's all any carrier should have to hear. If you're being told that your process is scary, you have some innovation ahead of you, right?
So I think to sum this up, okay, if I might just add to some 2 cents here, is that what Jeff is saying is, look, these are our clients. And what Eric is saying, we need some control, and what Amy is saying. So there's a lack of, number one, communication between the carriers and us. okay, from this electronic standpoint. There's a lack of control that we have. So you need to kind of mold, mesh it all together to give us that control, to have that communication, and to also be electronically savvy. It makes no sense to me why the mortgage business and the real estate business can do DocuSign on everything, but the insurance business cannot.
Thank you, Jay.
No,
Guys,
and if I could just, I mean, I think what I'm hearing is, especially for those larger cases, is you guys want that control, and the electronic submission really wasn't necessarily designed for these larger cases because again, if you think about these larger cases, exactly what you guys know, we're getting APSs, we're getting paramedical exams, we're getting all this additional information. The electronic submission isn't necessarily set up for that. And Amy, I think originally during the call, you had mentioned this idea. You didn't necessarily know which option to pick for your submission. I mean, I think having that control, especially for those clients where, it is going to be these larger face amounts, it makes 100% of sense for you guys to be in control of that process. Mark, whether it's electronic, meaning you're doing it on your laptop, or if it's a paper app, versus some of these smaller face amounts, you don't necessarily need to have that drive, and we're going to be more reliant on maybe the data pools and things like that. So I think it's all about, what type of applicant, what type of face amount are they applying for, and making sure we're choosing the right process.
Oh, Ben, I'm going to
there's
respond.
another
Ben,
problem.
hey,
Can-
Bruce, give me a second. I want to respond to Ben because you need to understand this. I process most of my small cases electronically, and
Yeah.
they most of the time get messed up. So even the small cases electronically.
So, but this is great, Jake. This is like a super critical point. And Scott, you asked this question of Jeff earlier, does the size of the case matter? And the answer was no, right? I think that this is where we seem to be falling down. There's this bifurcation in innovation conversations where it's like, well, smaller cases don't matter. So let's just do whatever with those. And then big cases, we're going to X. But what we're hearing today is no, all of my customers matter. Every single applicant, regardless of their face, matters, right? The face amount they're buying matters. And so the process needs to be good. If it's big or it's small, it needs to be digitally supported, electronically supported, because that's only fair. Electronic signature, it's only fair that you should be able to use that, right? Because we live in 2021. So it should be supported.
So
But
any AI generated contact, is there an ability to add the equivalent of a My Calendar notification to the advisor so that they can coach the client prior to the contact? Because a touch from an outsider to some of my clients is not going to be well received. But hey, you're going to be getting a call from Joe APS, or you're going to be getting a call from Joe Paramed up front, absolutely smooths that out, or a potential invitation for inclusion in the phone interview. Because what I think Mark said earlier, they are much more receptive in hand-holding. They've spoken to us for years. We know their dog's name versus outsider.
That's a good
saying,
point.
hey, pull your pants down. Tell me everything about you, but don't worry, the man behind the curtain's not paying attention.
yeah.
That was really good, by the way. So I want to quick summarize. This is awesome. We love the discussion. We're coming to the end of the hour, and I know there's a bunch of people that had to drop off. I'm going to summarize this in 4 things. What I heard, that these are our clients, right? From an agent standpoint, we need consistency, communication, and they are our clients across the board. So I think if I summarized, and Jay did a good job of it earlier, that's kind of what I heard. But I want to take a quick second, and I think the team will say this as well. Thank you. This was amazing feedback. We have 3 more of these scheduled. In the email that you got them all. So we're going to do accelerated underwriting. We're going to do e-records. And we're also going to follow the last one with jumbo case process in the future of underwriting. This is in Nicole and Mark and Ben and Dan, you can answer this question. Is this what you need from these folks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the more of this is
the more the merrier, because we want to hear the trials and tribulations that the people that are the bloodline of this business, we want to hear from you, because this allows us to really speak to our carrier partners also, right? Because by the time it comes from Mark all the way up, keeps on going, it gets muffled. We're
Yeah.
hearing it now, so
Yeah.
we can be more direct because of their partnership here.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. The candor is absolutely essential.
Give them back control, Nicole. They'll all be very happy.
I'm working on it. Maybe like, give me 6 months. I'll see what I can do.
All right, somebody write that down. I got the pen. She said 6 months. Nicole says everybody gets control in 6 months. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, Diana. Do you want to?
Yeah,
Say-
guys, thank you. I really depended on you to have a voice, and I knew that you would. And I know that the other 3 sessions that are coming up are all very important to you guys. So we will continue this conversation just as we're doing it now and talk about the underwriting process and everything. And please, thank you really again for being part of our family and for participating in this conversation. And thank you, Nicole, for inviting me to do this. It meant a lot. I'm glad it worked.
Oh my gosh, this is wonderful.
you.
Appreciate
Great.
it.
Thank you, guys.
All right, everyone. Hey, it's great to see everyone. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Scott. Bye,
Bye.
Diana. Thank you,
See ya.
Nicole.
Bye, guys.